Hey, what's up you guys? This is Bart coming to you from TST Industries in Florida with another video showing you installations on the Grom. It is 2019 at the time of shooting of this video. This bike has been around since 2017. It's the second generation Grom. We've already rolled out with pod signals of different kinds, flush mount signals, all sorts of cool technologies for this bike. And now we're gonna show you our new signal technology that fits on there. We call it a flush pod unit. It's MECH-GTR signals, exclusive here at TST Industries. We design these things ourselves, we manufacture them, and now in this video we're going to show you how to install them. But first, what's so special about these signals? They do have a running light feature on them in the form of an accent light that is available in many different colors. The color you choose is really up to you. These just get coupled with the signals like this. It's really simple to do. Snap them in. They do have ratcheting pieces that capture them once they're mounted, and they just plug in like that. You make your connections and you're good to go. It's a fairly straightforward install with the exception of one little modification that needs to be done to the bike. When you remove the boomerang and remove the OEM signal from here, we do need to enlarge this opening a little bit so that our pod actually fits in there and the fastener can get on it from the inside of this piece and lock it in place. I'll show you guys how to do that. This modification is permanent, but considering that the OEM signal still fits on there without a problem after the modification's done, in case you ever need to go back to OEM, you have that capability. And if you screw something up during the installation and you need to replace it, these things are available at the dealership or places like mrcycles.com for roughly $17 to $22 a piece depending on the color. These are actually 22, the simpler colors are 17. Anyway, so it's not a really big investment. If you don't trust yourself, maybe bring it to a mechanic, but I'll show you step by step how to do it, and I think you could possibly handle it. Connections on these signals are made simple via plug and play harness that comes included with these. We do have these rubber grommets, O-rings rather, that fit on here. They are optional. I like to use them. They fit in from the inside and they damp the actual assembly a little bit. I'll show you guys how to use these. Anyway, I'm really excited to get started. One more thing I have to mention, anytime you go from the incandescent light bulbs that are mounted by the OEM on the front to LED type signals, chances are you are going to cause a hyperflash symptom on your bike. The signals are drawing much less current from the bike and telling your relay that something's going on. It'll start flashing faster. For the remedy, I recommend our Gen 2F flasher relay. It's a plug and play component. It replaces your OEM unit. I'll show you guys where that unit's located on the bike because we're going to be in that area anyway. So if you pick up these components and the relay at the same time, you can make your assembly all in one shot. We do have a separate video going over the detailed installation of this part in case you're only interested in this. So you can see that on our YouTube channel or tstindustries.com. Let's get wrenching. Let's go. The purpose of the first set of steps will be to remove this whole unit here and go to the table and perform some operations on it on the table. For the removal, we will be taking out these two fasteners and also the matching fasteners on the opposite side. I'm using a 5mm Allen to get these loose. We can go ahead and extract them all the way. These plastic shrouds, these boomerangs, are actually pressed in and located on mounting bosses here, so the unit will not come down crashing off the bike. Now that the fasteners are out, we're going to use the lower part for a hinge point, and we're just going to spread the top apart away from the center plane of the bike. And once you do that, that clears the mounting bosses and lets you rotate about this axis on the lower bosses. And now we basically just do the same thing on the bottom. We will clear the bosses by flexing away from the center plane of the bike. Okay. Now that that's off, there are two plugs that need to be withdrawn from mating plugs. One of the plugs is a 9 position that comes out from this boot here, and the other plug plugs straight into the LED headlight here. Take that off. Once that's clear, you can go work on this unit on the table. All right, on the table now, I like to use something to protect my headlight. This nice soft rag will do the job. Place this down like so. Now we will remove these two boomerang shrouds from the bike. First, I like to remove this push fastener. Then using an 8mm socket or some sort of wrench, I will loosen this screw. Now this screw is responsible for adjusting the position of your headlights. Since I have mine adjusted already where it needs to be and where I like it, I'm going to mark it. This step I'll leave up to you, but I like to mark this so that I can just return to the same exact position after my assembly procedure here, and then I won't have to do any guesswork. I won't have to do any adjustments to get it in the same exact spot. Once this screw is out, I will then try to locate my signal wire for this left side. I'm going to focus on the left side first. Left is orange. Withdraw the plug, and now there are a series of catches here and how to remove this component. First, it needs to be split apart at the bottom here. Once you split it like this, there's a little window here with a tab that locates in there. When you pry them apart, it enables the removal. Now there's a tab here that needs to go through the largest portion of this window, and it gets taken out. Now you rotate back towards yourself and remove this whole piece. The reason why I rotated this towards myself is that there is a metal tab that interfaces with this portion here, and it remains engaged until you take that back. Now, make sure that this rubber piece stays on here. This is a damper for the mount for the headlight. When you reassemble this, it needs to be on there, and then you go in the reverse order of disassembly. I will focus on this side, and we'll talk about the other side next. The signal here uses a 10mm socket. We use a 10mm, unlock it. Once the nut is off, the metal spacer comes off. Signal comes out, and then we can remove this rubber grommet piece and just pry it out. And now we are left with this. This is the component that we will modify to fit our new MECH-GTR flush pod style signals. I do like to put these back how they were for storage. I'm just going to do that real quick now, and we'll move on. All right, so now we can actually see what it will take to get this hole opened up to the appropriate size for this signal. We could either use this portion of the signal, its pod, or the fastening ring to determine where we will need to enlarge this. Now, for me, this is a little bit difficult to use because I may or may not get it on the right axis for my signal beam. So what I like to do, instead of using the stalk of the signal, I like to use this fastening ring because I can actually superimpose it here and get the springy feet all the way to the outside here and make sure that I have it symmetrical about the center axis from here to here before I mark anything off. However you decide to template it, just know that the length here has enough length to house this entire signal. So what we'll need to do is just enlarge a little bit here and here on these two sides, and that should really accommodate this size of stalk in there. So what I'll do is I'll use a fine point Sharpie, make sure that center axis of this fastener goes through the center axis here. This, I believe I can do by eye pretty efficiently. And just refine what I did here. This looks pretty good to me. My rule of thumb is always measure multiple times, and that really prevents any sort of cuts, recuts, any downstream alterations. And to me here, it looks like I have ample space to fit my signal through. The key here is to keep this pretty tight around this opening that we're making. So if you're unsure, go step by step, cut out a little bit and then add a little bit more of a cutout, and then you'll be in business. Now for the actual cut, you can use a file and just take your time. It'll be pretty time consuming, but if you have a half round profile, that can actually get in there. And like I said, it'll be pretty time consuming, but you can get the job done. What I'm gonna use is a rotating file on my Wizard tool. It's similar to a Dremel, any rotating tool like this. I just have it outfitted with this rotating file. I'm gonna get in there and grind away at it little by little, test fit, and make sure that I still have it nice on axis and tight. So eye protection, and let's get going. All right, so as you can see, I'm still within the bounds of what I marked off, but I didn't go all the way to the edge. I'm gonna go little by little, make sure I didn't make a mistake. And that is still a little bit tight here, but it looks perfectly on the right axis for the signal beam to fire at. So let's see. Just gonna enlarge this a little bit towards my boundary that I marked off. Let's give this a try. All right. Looks like we still have a little bit to go up in the front here. All right, very nice. We're on the right axis. The signal itself is very, very tight. It doesn't want to rotate. It's protruding from the backside very nicely, ready for us to cap it off with our fastener. So I'm going to clean up the table for us here a little bit, and then we'll continue with the installation. Okay, now I'm going to get this signal ready for installation. Now that our hole is the proper size, first I'm going to get our running light module prepped. These are available in a number of different colors. Like I mentioned, for this particular bike, we're using hyper white. This wire gets inserted through the slot like this with the ratcheting components sticking up. This is now ready to be inserted into the body of the signal. That same channel that houses this wire houses the rest of the wires. And we flex this component in, and those little ratchet pieces have their windows that they engage with. And now it's just a matter of plugging this in. What I like to do is wrap it around this wire. The combination of these two wires provides strain relief, like that. I'm going to go the opposite way here. And this plug is keyed, so there's really only one way to plug it together. And there we go, nice tight package. You may wonder why we decided to terminate this signal in bullet connectors when we know that Honda Grom uses this 3-position plug. And the reason is very simple. We produce this signal type for many different bikes, and we couple that with different harness converters like this one. We do color code them, so it's really simple to get it all matched up, blue to blue, red to red, brown to brown, making sure that these insulators fit together. Once you get these connections made and the insulators are inserted into each other, I would urge you not to trust these insulators to stay in place during riding vibration, and lock them down with a little bit of electrical tape. This does a number of things. It will keep your insulators on the actual conductors, making sure that you don't experience a short circuit somewhere and blow a fuse. You can also make this connection watertight. Not that you get a lot of water spray in there, but it's always nice to not have your conductors get wet during wet riding. Once I have a nice tight wrap on here like this, this is now ready to be inserted in like so. And get this all the way through. Now on the other side, I will opt to use our rubber grommet for extra damping of this whole connection. That just gets inserted over the wires and then pushed onto the base here. Use a small screwdriver. You can fit that in there, press it in against the bottom of that well, and now we're ready to put our fastener on. This is a flexible plastic fastener that's supposed to fit on the wire like this, springy feet first. Now you'll notice that this will not fit exactly within that well. And if you just force it in, you may damage something. So what we're gonna do is identify which feet we need to cut off and what we need to modify to ensure success of this going in and actually locking it down. So immediately I see that the forward section needs to be clipped off on the bottom here. I'm using a diagonal cutter. This will make clearance for where this component fits in. And that looks really good. And we'll need to clip off portions of the first 3 forward feet. On both sides of this fastener. And let's see how this aligns now. I'm pretty comfortable with that. I'm going to press this on. It actually uses a number of ratcheting teeth here on a receiving ratcheting ramp system on the body like this, and just as it goes on, it pressurizes against the back, the inside of this well. It'll preload itself and it won't come off. If you ever need to take it off, you just pry up on these resetting tabs and push the signal out, for most guys, this is unnecessary. Once this thing goes on, it stays on. Help yourself with a tiny screwdriver to press it down, preload it against the rubber grommet. Now, as you finish this connection here, make sure that your actual signal body sits against the boomerang shroud. And then you just work down the ratchets until they are fully preloaded against that rubber piece. And then you're good to go. You can just test this, make sure it's not moving around. Mine's actually moving around a little bit. That means I didn't preload it in the rear section enough. Press it down a little bit more. Make sure I achieved that proper preload. And now it looks good. So now I can put this back on my headlight assembly. So, metal tab goes on first, along with keying the rubber clad bump out here, this boss, with this accepting feature. Then we will align the larger tab here with this window and then bring it back. And at this point, we can plug our signal in. And then we just have to do something about the wiring distribution. We do have these nice wiring routing guides here that the OEM put in. The OEM signal wires are considerably shorter, so we just need to find the best possible distribution here that will be hidden. And if you bunch up your wires like this, once this is installed back on the bike, it'll be held in place and you should be good to go. Now, the right side of the bike is exactly the same as what I just showed you. So what I'm gonna do is just swap it over real quick and we'll jump to the next step. All right, so here I am with both of these shrouds already modified, the signal's mounted, my wiring's already bunched up properly here, stowed away. I told you guys in the beginning that I was gonna show you where your OEM signal relay is. You can just change it at this point if you've purchased our Gen 2F flasher relay. Put this rubber grommet on here, put that on the tab. For this installation, we won't be changing it. We want to illustrate what happens when you have hyper flash. All right, so now I'm gonna get these windows on their respective tabs here and get it all snapped in. Let me use my push fastener to hold this together. Now I'll use this screw that came out of here. Get this tightened down by hand. And now my mark will let me know exactly where this needs to end up. Okay. Now I'm ready to go back to the bike with this assembly, plug it in, and see how we did. All right, before we actually install this back on, I like to plug it in and test all the functions of the equipment that I just installed, making sure that everything's operating properly. We don't want to go too far ahead of ourselves and then have to back up. So our running lights, hyper white running lights, are operating correctly. And now we'll either see hyper flash or solid. On this particular bike, it doesn't even hyper flash. It just stays solid if you don't have enough current drawn from the OEM relay. So that just shows you that some sort of flash rate controller will be necessary. At this point, I will change this to our TST version Gen 2F flasher relay. All right, let's try that again. There we go. All right. Now we're good. All the lights are functioning properly. I do need to mention that our flasher relay is adjustable. You can refer to our flasher relay installation video for how to do that. I'm just gonna keep chugging along here, get this mounted back up. This is basically the reverse order of disassembly. We mount these holes on these bosses first. We'll need to stretch this shroud over to accommodate those bosses in there. Once aligned and concentric, that will snap in and it'll provide a hinge point here. We can push this towards the rear of the bike while spreading these shrouds. Again, once we align the holes concentric with the bosses, it'll snap back in. And now we're ready to replace our fasteners that we took out in the first step. And we're done. All right, so even though this installation requires a small modification to two of these components, I feel like it is pretty straightforward and pretty quick to do, and the results really speak for themselves. These signals look really, really good on this bike. They really set off this whole robot-like fascia, and they're also not very expensive. They're super bright, super stylish, aerodynamic. You get the gist. If you ever need to go back to OEMs, it's really, really simple. You just take off your MECH-GTRs, put these rubber boots back in. They actually do still fit really tight, even though I've modified this component. So you put your original equipment back in just like that. Nobody will ever be able to tell that it was modified. So anyway, I hope you guys like what you see here. We try to provide really nice components for you guys out there to modify your Groms with. You can find all of these components at tstindustries.com. And if you like what you see, please hit subscribe. And hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Take care.